Leah, I had forgotten about that song. Thank you for reminding me. I love that song. Well, how many of you got the email I sent to the congregation? A few hands there. If you didn't check, you'll find some good stuff in there. If you did, you know that there is a counselor crisis these days. It seems there's just not enough counselors to go around, good counselors, I should say, and that's bad, especially bad now because according to Newsweek and other sources, there is an anxiety epidemic going on right now. If ever people needed a shrink before, they sure do need him now, which is a slight hint as an answer to the question, who is the best counselor? Who is the best counselor? Our Father, if you recall, our scripture reading today, you're usually used to hearing at another time. There's what we had reading earlier, but they're in the midst. Wonderful counselor. We're used to seeing this or hearing this verse every year, several times at Christmas time. Not during the year, but at Christmas to emphasize what? What's it usually used for to emphasize at Christmas? The birth of Christ, the Son that is given unto us. But when you look closer, if you were to connect the dots, you would see not only is a son, a child given to us, but a counselor, a wonderful counselor, no less. A wonderful counselor. The word wonderful from the original can also be translated astonishing or miraculous. When you read in the Bible about Jesus doing signs and wonders, it's that same word for wonders that can be translated miracle, miraculous, amazing, beyond our understanding even. And these days, having a counselor who is always available is an astonishing thing, much less God himself. But that's not all that we have with him. The fact that he is given to us also means what? He's free. A free counselor. You know how much counselors charge these days? $200 an hour. He's free and he's always available. That's one thing that might make him the best counselor, that he's free. But you've probably heard the saying, free advice or free counsel is as good as it. Anybody? Jim, you're a good Texas boy. They have good sayings down there. Free advice is as good as it costs. It's worth about as much as it costs. But is that all he's good for? That he's free and that he's available all the time? Look to the screen, Isaiah 11:2. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, prophecy of Jesus, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. So it's not just that he's free, not just that he's always available, but he is wise and understanding. Here, for the Lord gives wisdom. He gives wisdom. He doesn't just keep it to himself. It is available. The Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. Knowledge and understanding. Proverbs 2:6. Jesus the counselor, always available, always free, and always right. Full of understanding, knowledge, and wisdom. Proverbs 3:19, by wisdom the Lord laid the earth's foundations. By understanding he set the heavens in place. So is his counsel dependable? Sure. If it's good enough to lay the foundation of heaven and earth, it ought to be good enough for those of us who stand on the earth under heaven, huh? We got a good counselor, the best counselor. So Jesus, clearly, to all of us here, we would all vote. If we had to vote, who's the best counselor? Who would vote for Jesus? Everybody vote for Jesus, right? It's obvious, always available, always free, and wise enough to lay the foundation of heaven and earth. So, what's the real counselor crisis these days? It's not that one isn't available. It's not that one isn't affordable. Not that one isn't all-knowing, but that people don't take his counsel. Here's Isaiah 4:30, verse 1. Woe to the rebellious children, says the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me. Woe to the rebellious children that take counsel, but not of me. People are getting their counsel from other counselors. And the best counselor says that counsel is bad counsel. He knows because he's already checked them out. Remember, he knows everything, so he knows what those counselors are counseling. He knows the resources, and he knows the end from the beginning, so he knows what that counsel will amount to. As he says just a few chapters later, there was no counselor that when I asked of them, the counselors, that could answer a word. They're all vanity or emptiness and confusion. Their counsel is bad, he says. He checked out the counselors. And he's telling the people who go to those counselors, don't go to those counselors. Come to me. Here's a little longer passage a few chapters later, Isaiah 47, 13 to 15, a little abbreviated. And the counsel you have received has only worn you out. He's appealing to them with their own experience. The counsel you have received has only worn you out. Let your astrologers come forward. Those stargazers who make predictions month by month. Let them save you from what is coming. Let those who are predicting the future, who know what's going to happen, let them save you from what is coming upon you. They can't even save themselves. Each of them goes on in his error. There is not one of them that can save you. What's he saying? Your counselors don't know what they're talking about. Don't trust their counsel. Now, he's not referring to formal counselors in the sense that they have a plaque outside of their office doors saying counselor, but they are individuals that people go to for counsel on what's coming upon the earth. A counselor in that sense can be parents. You know, parents are doing the best they can to raise their children to be prepared for the future that lies before us, the what's coming. So them with their experience say, look, this is probably coming in your future. I want you to be ready for what's coming. But sometimes parents are not right. Parents, your peers, your friends, who do we often go to besides parents? And so often instead of parents, who do we go to for advice? Whose counsel do we take about what's the right thing or the best thing that we could be doing? Our peers, our friends, our buddies. Why, how could they steer us wrong? They're our friends, right? Parents, peers, priests, pastors. Sometimes got some good advice. But not always dependable. We can listen to others for guidance. And in this case, God is pointing at astrologers. He's saying, go to them. And, this is facetious, sarcastic. He's not really telling them to go there. He's saying it's not going to work. Don't go to them for counsel. People have been going to counselors, going to astrologers for counsel ever since the 60s. Did you know that? 60s? Is that how far back it goes? No, way back, way back, thousands of years. Remember the passage in Daniel when the king has a dream and he's going to call all his counselors together and say, I need to know what's going on. Who's in the group? Magicians and astrologers are in that group. And here in Isaiah, God is addressing there at that time before Daniel. Astrologers, his people are going to astrologers for guidance. Here today, it's getting more popular again. Now, you can't probably see from where you're sitting if you're all the way in the back, but astrology is on the rise. People going there for counsel, and they say it's because of the insecurity, the instability in the world where that's going on, that they want to know what's going to happen. How can I be best prepared for the future? And they go to astrology. So here's a slide found that kind of divides men and women, but in both cases, faith in astrology dissipates with age, with maturity. You don't have to be a Christian or not. It's just simply, this isn't a religious survey. It's simply a belief survey. Do you believe, the question asked is, do you believe in astrology or that the position of the stars and planets influence people's lives? And this is the percentage of people that say yes. 18 to 44-year-olds, men, 38%. That's more than a third of men, 18 to 44, who believe that astrology is trustworthy to influence people. Trustworthy as counselors. Women, some less, 32%. Not quite a third of women, 18 to 44. 45 to 65, it drops to less than half with men by then, only 15%, and women, just a few percent less than their 1844 age, to 29. Then 65 and older men, they're down to 9%. Women have only dropped to 23%. So I don't know, make out of that what you want, but in general, the trend is the same, that as people get older, they have more life experience, more observation to maybe see through the idea that they should go to astrology for counsel. And this is just those who believe. There's a high percentage of those that aren't sure even. So I grew up a non-Christian back in the late 60s, early 70s. There was a song on the radio, and everybody knows that it wouldn't be on the radio if it's not true, right? So there's this song. Some of you will remember. This will be a little test, because I have a hunch that there'll be as many people that could recite this song by memory as they could the hymn that we sang for our opening song today. So I'll just give you a few words to lead out and see if you can fill in the blank. When the moon is in the 7th house and Jupiter aligns the planets, then peace will guide the planet and love will steer the stars. The dawning of the age of Aquarius. It was a popular song. It was like on top of the charts. The fifth dimension. It was a big deal. And I'm just a kid, don't know anything about religion or anything, but hey, if it's on the radio, it's got to be right. There's something to it. But let me ask you, because we are supposedly, now there's debate among astrologers, but in general they all agree, we are in the age of Aquarius. It was dawning then, supposedly. We are deep in it now. Here's a couple of the other words that you just tell me. Check out the description of the age of Aquarius that we are in. See if it's a good fit. Harmony and understanding. Does that just describe our world today? Harmony and understanding. How about this? Sympathy and trust abounding. So I hear a couple more no's here. How about this one? No more falsehoods or derisions. Does that sound like us today? Do we have much more of that today than we did back in the 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s? Or is it the opposite? It's the opposite. Look around. People are not getting along more than they did before. There are not less falsehoods or less awareness of them. So you would look at that and you would say, forget that stuff. Or you'd think maybe back to Daniel's time. You'd think just knowing for Christians, because a lot of Christians are buying into this as something to believe in. A lot of Christians. Daniel 2. How'd that story turn out when he called all the astrologers and everybody together for advice? They couldn't answer anything, but he who trusted the counsel of God, he came through. But does that make people trust God? I guess I didn't. If they did, it didn't get to me as a kid. So by the time I'm in high school, about to graduate high school, going to make some big decisions for my future, and I go to astrology for help. I wasn't sure, but it's like, hey, my mom had a bunch of books around, so I was reading some. And I found one that was a year old. And you know what? I'm not kidding. It described exactly what happened in my year before, because it was a year old, remember? And it said, this is what's going to happen in this next year. You can expect to meet somebody you haven't met before. You can expect a change in your life. Wow, this stuff is true. So I began to think, if I could just get to the right astrologer and do my personal horoscope, not just for the month I was born, but for the moment in the place, and then she'll tell me, you just make this decision and the rest of your life, it'll be like a wave, like you're surfing a wave. The rest is just perfect. Which ended up in some crazy nonsense because they were full of nonsense. Come to find out, astrology books and horoscopes are written out in very vague general terms, so the chances are they're going to fit you, whoever you are, wherever you are. And then I became a Christian and I renounced astrology because I read the Bible. It said that's nonsense, don't do it. Don't trust that counsel because, going back to our previous passage, in Isaiah, I don't know what's going to happen. They're just making stuff up. It's not that hard to do. How many think we're going to have a new president within the next 4 years? 50-50 chance you're right. You know, how many think you're going to have a new experience that will change your life in some way in the next year? Yeah. Even if it's something as simple as, you stub your toe. It's going to change your life because you're going to walk a little different for a few days. Whatever it is, it can fit right in there. So don't be one of the many Christians who buy into that stuff. But do be one of the many Christians, percentage-wise fewer, that go to the best counsel, best counselor to get the best counsel for what to expect, how to deal with it, and how to live life. Now, is that saying that all the counsel that any other counselor has is all bad? No. It's not tempting if it's all bad. Satan's got to mix in some good with the bad, right? So check that email out and you'll find a story that it's really a good story with some good counsel that saves some people's lives and does good things. But if you just turn on the news, you'll find a lot of good counsel. The secular news. We should get our sleep, right? That reduces anxiety and depression. Get enough sleep. It makes a difference. Basically, it's the New Start principles. You could turn on the TV and get that from the news. Exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, breathe air, breathe deep, rest, trust in divine power is the only one that's missing. So you can get all those good things that you get in the Bible, you can get those, but the one you'll miss is trust in divine power. So the story I shared with you, I think is really good because it has reduced the incidence of suicides and depression, murders, various things. But so I'll share you a little bit of the story, but then show you how God's even better. So country Zimbabwe. They have 16 million people and one public psychiatrist available for all of them. And there's high rates of depression and suicide because they've been in wars. And in the last decade, they just had tragedy after tragedy. So in this BBC article, this guy goes to the people who hire him and says, "What are my resources?" And they say, "Well, you have none. Zero. Except we've got these 12 grandmothers. You know, they're not working and they're available to help you." Oh, do they have a background in counseling? No background whatsoever. So he gives them the most basic training on a talk therapy and sets them down in some benches. And they end up making a huge difference. I mean, now it's a worldwide program. You can go to New York City. If you walk by an orange bench, that's designated as for grandmothers or others who will sit there and be available to just hear somebody talk about their problem and offer some basics. Here's one grandma in the first group that says what she did. "I introduce myself and I say," remember, she's just sitting at a park bench where people know. You sit there and you'll get some counsel. "I introduce myself and I say, 'What is your problem? Tell me everything and let me help you with my words.'" It's just talk. She's not offering heavy duty stuff. She listens and then talks. After hearing an individual's story, she helps them make the best decision. For example, this one lady says, "A man whose wife had just run off with the landlord of their rental home. The husband wanted to take an axe and end the couple's lives. He thought that was a good idea. But I convinced him not to," she says. "I told the guy, 'If you go to prison, who's going to raise your kids?'" Now, that's not brilliant counsel, but it's sensible counsel, and it worked. The guy went on to be remarried and have a good life. It's a success story when it comes to making life better in this world. But when you dig a little deeper, you find the counsel isn't always in harmony with God's will or word. It's not trust in divine power, but it is compassion and helping your brother and sister. And God looks ahead at this type of counsel and sees the future. And he writes in Isaiah 29:14, he inspires these words, "Therefore, behold, I will do a marvelous work among this people, a work and a wonder, for the wisdom of their wise men shall perish, and the understanding of their prudent men shall not be visible." In other words, when I look down the line, their counsel is not going to lead them into eternity. So what does he do? God has a marvelous work. John alluded to it in Sabbath school today. In another place, it says, "I will destroy the wisdom of the wise," which if you think about it, it's more, I will blow their wisdom away. In other words, my wisdom is so much more long-lasting that it will blow the competition away. So we want to go to the best counselor, not just to see us through this world, but into the next. And that's who we can count on to do just that. Jesus, clearly the best counselor, always available, always free, and his wisdom and understanding endures forever. So this is the designated as the mental wellness Sabbath. So I encourage you today, follow all that good advice that the world knows too. You know, take a little walk this afternoon, breathe some fresh air, drink some water, get some rest. Go through that list of things that most everybody knows will make you feel better. Reduce your anxiety. But don't neglect that trust in divine power that can see you through not just the next day or the next week of instability, but into that eternity that he himself, the counselor, the best counselor, has waiting for you and I. What do you say? Let's stand together and sing our closing hymn to this God.